You're listening to the Your Story Within podcast with Dr. Janine Bennett, a writing coach and author with 5 published books to her name and a few more in the works. Through this podcast, Dr. Bennett aims to help listeners tell their story within and shares all the industry secrets of self-publishing and book marketing. And now, here's your host, Dr. Janine Bennett.
Okay. Welcome to the Your Story Within podcast. Today, we have Sparrow back with us.
Yay.
If you recall, in episode 42, Erin discussed her book, Muldoon's Minnesota Darling, a historical fiction novella that I could just not put down. I loved it. So she promised she would come back when she finished her new book, which that's what we're going to talk about today, Muldoon's Misfortunes. Yes. So she's going to give us the scoop today. Welcome back, Erin. I'm so excited to have you here, and I can't wait to hear all about it.
Thank you. Yay.
All right. Well, let's just jump right in. So give me a little background information on this one. Can you share a bit about your journey from writing short stories to becoming a novelist now? And then what inspired you to write the Resilient Muldoons series?
Okay. Oh, gosh. It's so funny. I always loved to read because my mama set that up. She always put books on our bed, and she really encouraged us all to read. So because all those years of reading, I also like to write stories, essays, whatever, but it was for fun, journal. And then my friend, who I treated to a workshop for writing, because she'd been writing for about 10 years, I was like, let's give her this birthday gift. So she goes, you have to come with me. So at William Jessup University, there was a professor, Dr. Portia Hopkins, and she did a workshop. And I sat with my friend thinking, oh, this is fun. And all of a sudden, the light bulb went on when she was speaking about writing your story as fiction. Like, it suddenly made sense because my real life stories were kind of pretty much fictional sounding. So I was like, and so my friend at the time, she said, here, join a critique group and just start writing. And it was so odd that I actually listened to her, and I went and I signed up, started writing a short story. And 3 months later, they published my first one. And these were travel stories because I had lived overseas and traveled quite extensively. And so God showed up all over there. He didn't wait until I got back to California where I was living. Right. So that's what started the story writing. And then the group that I was in said, you need to write books. And I didn't really want to.
Okay. That's kind of funny.
I want to. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk now about the character, because we talked about, Mick in the last episode.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about him now. We had shared in our conversation that he is a complex character. We agreed with that, with many struggles.
Mm-hmm.
How did you develop his character, and what do you hope readers will take away from his journey in this particular book?
I developed him because you're supposed to write what you know. And when they told me to write a book, I thought, okay, what do I know? Well, they had really liked a story that I wrote. My grandfather had told me that happened to him in 1914, and it got published also. So when I was going through all of the family stuff that I'd been given, I started thinking about, after I heard these stories about my great-grandfather, that he would be a good character to kind of inspire me to write, because I did want to write historical fiction. So it's basically inspired by his life, a lot of the things in his life, but it's highly fictionalized at the same time. But he became the main character, Mick Muldoon, who's also in the novella. And this is his book that covers about, it's about 60 years of his life.
Okay.
So it's quite extensive for how much it covers. So yeah, he was a Irish immigrant. And of course he had a drinking problem. sort of like that stereotype.
Yeah,
But
I'm Irish. Yeah.
yeah,
I don't have a drinking problem, but
yeah, I don't either, but boy, they can, and they had a lot of hardships, and I think alcohol was one thing that really helped him. That he self-medicated because of a birth defect he had.
okay.
So that was kind of interesting to try to write about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So
gosh, I mean, in the novella, I couldn't believe everything he went through. And friends, I'm not going to give that away. Watch episode 42 or go read the book because it's amazing the things
and that was
Mick
only
went through in
10
that.
years of his life, a little 10-year portion of his life. Yeah.
So how many pages is the book? Because I'm used to the novella now being
Yes.
shorter, quick read. How long is this one?
I'm on the second round of edits. So the last I saw, I actually cut 3 chapters out,
Oh wow.
which is fine. I can use them somewhere else, but it helped the story go a little quicker. It was about 340.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
probably going to be more. It's probably going to be more like 320 by the time it gets completely
Okay.
edited. And
Definitely a novel. Definitely a novel.
yeah, that's a novel. It's hard to make historical fiction novels shorter unless it's a novella.
Okay.
There's a
Yeah,
lot
you
of
have a gift.
details.
You do have a gift though for those novellas. Yeah,
Oh,
making
thank
them
you.
shorter.
Thank you.
Well, I love that because I love historical fiction. So as I shared during our last episode, I loved your book because it was short and I could read it. And like you said, historical fictions are typically long.
Yeah.
I have a book right now that's like 460 pages or something,
Wow. Mhm.
and I haven't even cracked the book open yet because I know I'm going to need time,
Yeah.
because you can't scan those, you'll miss details.
Yeah.
So,
There you
yeah.
go. I was just going to say details are big in historical fiction. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
It's
All
fun to
right.
watch.
So the story is set on, am I saying this right? Verdant Island?
Yeah, Verdant. Mhm.
Verdant Island. Okay. Beset by poverty and death, and later moves to America. How did you approach the research with that for those settings, and why did you choose them? Is that part of the history of your family again, or okay?
Yeah, because I chose to write about things inspired by my family, that my dad's family, um, everything had to begin in Ireland because they came from there.
Okay.
And the background of the characters before they were immigrants was pretty crucial to why they were the way they were when they arrived in America. I've visited Ireland 3 times now. I would go again, and every time I would notice details because even though it's modern, it retains a lot of its ancient history. There's enough there where it's not been destroyed. It's an island, which is why I call it a verdant island, green verdant island,
Mhm.
and the things there remain. Whatever wasn't destroyed by the English, of course, Ireland has a pretty violent history because the English were always trying to take it away.
Okay.
We know that they eventually got their independence, but at this point in time in the 1850s to 60s, before an uprising in the 70s, they were still trying to battle for their freedom pretty extensively. And so England oppressed the Catholics, and a lot of Ireland was Catholic, St. Patrick and all. I
Right.
mean, that
Right.
history is real. So because this family is also Catholic in the southern part of Ireland, there weren't a lot of documents for me to go research. Things get destroyed in the Catholic churches. They got burnt, all sorts of
Yeah.
reasons. So between my cousin who went there and my daughter and niece who researched, and they used Ancestry a lot, little plug for Ancestry,
Yeah.
they found a lot of documentation that Ireland has now also put into Ancestry. They've discovered some things.
Oh,
So
wow.
some of it came too late for my book, but we're going to go with it because it's fictional. But
Yeah.
at the same time, it gave us a timeline. It gave us some family history. Most of the family history I used was things my grandfather wrote or word of mouth stories he told us. So the accuracy of the actual event, I'm not sure, but the timeline's pretty good. And so we
Okay.
went with that. We were able to use a lot of research online for that book.
Awesome. Yeah, I love ancestry. I haven't, because I haven't started writing the historical fiction, I just have the free account so far.
Yeah, I know.
Hayden's aunt has the full account and whatnot, and she's
Yeah,
always sending us tidbits and whatnot. So, but
it's
I do
fun.
love it because even the free account, you can find so much
Oh, yeah.
information. I've
I
taken
know.
my family on the Breyer side. I'm French on my dad's side. Briere is the pronunciation, but
Oh,
it's Americanized,
nice.
so they say Briar, you know.
Yeah.
And
I
we
think
I can
rare
take
is better.
yeah, Briere.
Yeah.
I can take it all the way to the 1600s with the free
Yes.
account, you know. So, uh,
Yes.
but anyway, yeah,
So it was
okay.
good for research purposes. It really was.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. Let's see. I have so many questions I want to ask.
I know.
Let me pick. Let me pick.
I know.
Of course, I got my handy notes here. So if you see me looking down, it's because I'm like, what should I ask next?
I know. I
Um,
do too. I've got mine.
so let's talk themes and messaging. So Meg's story involves themes of faith, hope, and resilience. What message do you hope readers will receive about these themes through Meg's experiences?
Um, my main goal that I'm hoping they'll understand when they read it is as Christians now, modern Christians, it's really easy to imagine decisions made now or how we would look at things because we have history to compare it to. But the people in that time and era, all they had was what they knew. And although Mick was educated through the Catholic Church, they educated the children. He still was very isolated on that island. He didn't have newspaper. You know, remembering 1860s, he didn't have access to things, and so all that he had was the church community of Ireland. Everything was based around the Catholic Church, and
Okay.
so he was imagining him. He was supposed to be a certain way, and like we can as believers, we can think we have to act or behave or think a certain way because we learn, we read and we learn and we're taught. But this family is a little bit off the beat. They're kind of off track. They hold on to the tenets of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, his death and Jesus' death and sacrifice for our sins. Like they know all the basics, but to apply it to their life that's got a lot of turmoil and death involved was harder. So Mick would hold on to his faith. That's what he knew, but it didn't seem to be working for him. And I think even now we can pray and think it's not working. And what I'm hoping to show is even though we wander off or we're having a struggle, God keeps track of us. He doesn't lose sight of us. He allows us to live, and then he just keeps coming in and trying to show that he's there. He wants to minister to us, come closer. And so I'm hoping that readers will catch on before Mick does, where he's got to make some changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true in life that, God has given us free will,
Yes.
but he can always straighten out our paths,
Yes.
or lead us in the right direction,
That's right. You said it better than I did. Really, that's what it is. You know?
All right, let's see what else. What was your the most challenging part of writing Muldoon's Misfortunes?
Okay.
I know you talked about timeline and research.
It was really hard. When I first started writing it, I kept wanting to understand my great-grandfather. But I had a little bit of information. I had letters that he wrote in his own handwriting. So I got the flavor of his personality, and I put that in the book because it's pretty strong to me. I'm able to see certain parts of him. But then I had to go forward eventually and say, this is all I can get on him. So you know what? He's going to be a mixture of some of the people in my family that I've known, my own grandfather, maybe he's got traits of him. And so creating Mick was a big challenge for me. I'm not a man.
Right.
I don't drink really. I haven't dealt with the things he's dealt with. So I would say that was the hardest part, getting his
Yeah.
character developed to a place where I liked it, or I really, really liked him. And the accuracy, which we talked about, trying to get it authentic to the era and the time to make sure I can get all the facts, but how do I make it real? That was a challenge.
I imagine, yeah, that would be difficult.
Mhm.
It's one thing if you're researching here, you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
but when you're researching in a foreign country that doesn't have, good records anymore
No.
because of different things that have occurred over time,
Yeah.
um, that, and then like you said, you're writing about a man and you're not a man,
Yeah.
and you have some nuggets of goodness to go on from your
Yeah.
great grandfather, but you still have to be true to the character
Yeah.
without, eh, yeah,
Yes.
that's hard.
And
I
and
imagine.
because he had the challenges he had, I thought, how do I explain these challenges he had? His letters were actually the biggest help. And watching my grandfather and his sisters, knowing them personally and how they turned out, kind of helped me to realize um, he did a pretty good job as a dad, despite all the things. And none of them ever said anything unkind about him, or
Oh, wow.
maybe it was their generation, but so I made sure I made their relationship pretty good, despite
Okay.
him, despite his
Okay.
choices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Well, let's stick with the writing process. So,
Okay.
do you have a particular writing routine or process that you follow?
Um, now that I'm kind of down to the crunch because of deadlines and things, I divide my days. I write 6 days a week. And when I say write, I mean social media posts, hopefully the book, probably not always, editing things, so I have divisions of time, my time for myself in the morning, and then I just go all the way till noon. Then I have a break for an hour. Then I write. And usually lately, I usually write in the morning. Lately, I've been writing the last hour before dinner. That's when I've been writing my next book. It seems to be, I finally get all the things done and then I can concentrate because I'm switching from left to right. I feel like I'm switching into the creative mode.
Gotcha.
And when the Holy Spirit inspires, often with like just one sentence will go through my brain or like a part of a conversation, because I'm a fiction writer and it's not weird. People say, um, I write it down really quick and I'm like, oh gosh, that's good. Okay. Because it will help me springboard into another chapter or finish up something. So I write it down.
I
Um,
hear that from a lot of authors that they get
mhm.
these moments and they have to capture them before they're gone.
They will fade and you'll be like, what did I think? Oh my gosh, what was that?
Yes.
Yeah.
My mentor's husband, uh, my mentor is a prolific writer. She's written, 100 plus books. And her
Wow.
husband said, "Now imagine if she wasn't an author, all those characters she has in her head." He said, "I'm glad she's an author and gets them out because
Yeah.
I wouldn't know what I would think otherwise." That was kind of
Yeah,
funny.
what would happen?
What would happen, right?
Yeah, what would happen? I know. That's when you know you're a fiction writer, when characters enter or you imagine certain scenes or something. That tells you that's because you could actually write that. You could
Yeah,
actually write
well,
that
she
down.
does crime, mystery, suspense,
Wow.
and there's times where she'll put on social media, "Does anybody know how long it takes a body to decompose?" And then she's like, Oh yeah, I'm writing a fiction book, so
Yeah.
people are freaked
Yeah.
out.
By the way, whoops.
Kind of funny, but yeah.
Yeah.
Um, how do you approach the creation of historical fiction, and what advice would you give aspiring writers in this genre?
Because I only wrote one short story in that genre, and then I jumped into a book, and now I'm writing another book. The biggest thing with historical fiction, we've talked about it, but you have to enjoy research. I mean, you're a professor, some students really can't stand having to research something, because we're not all made that way, where, oh my gosh, they sit there and go, ugh, they don't wanna dig around, they don't have to find things, they just want the information. With historical fiction, that's the biggest number one thing you've got to be able to do, and if you don't do it, you need to hire somebody to do it for you, because readers cannot stand to read something and go, "That did not happen then," or "Those weren't created then," or "That was before," because usually historical fiction readers like history, and so they've absorbed a lot of history, if
Right.
not taught it, or they've read vast amounts of it. So you have to be pretty accurate, or they're just gonna be like, "This she's just making this up." Well, you are,
Right,
but
you
you
are,
have
and
to
yeah.
use factual
Right,
Yeah, yeah,
right.
and you
Good,
can't just
good
use
tip.
one source. You need to use a few different sources to make sure what you put in there is true or accurate to the most extent.
Right, right.
So
Do you ever reach out to history professors or anything? I know you said you took the class,
yeah.
writing class, but
I haven't had to yet because I've been able to just use what my family kept and ancestry, because I was making it so personal about people I knew, and I've been talking about it. This is about, this is inspired by, I'm not just trying to come up with a story over around a historical event, which
right,
I know
right.
some people will, like World War II. You've got to be able to know what you're doing with World War II. Like if there's events that inspired a story, I would assume you'd have to do some interviewing. Yeah.
Yeah, because you definitely wanna make sure you got it right, and yeah,
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
Let's talk, personal experiences.
Okay.
So your bio mentions some unique experiences, like buying a one-way ticket to Israel and hopping a freight train.
Yeah.
Uh, how have these adventures influenced your writing?
Oh gosh. So all of my stories that have been published, short stories, were all about my travels, and I as something that happened in depending on what country or what was going on, but they were interesting enough to where people said, "You should write a book," but I thought it would be really boring just to write a travel book with, like, short stories. So I thought, well, one at a time.
There
So
you
yeah, and I learned because when I went overseas, I'd only been a believer walking closely with the Lord for about 5 years. And so that means I knew all the basics about Christianity and my faith, but I really didn't know what he would do if I left the country. I know that sounds weird, but I had to do it. So I leave and everything's the same. He's still with me. I can
yeah,
still pray. I can still go to church. I can still be with Christians. But going that distance really helped solidify in a 20, I think I was 20 years old, a 20-year-old brain that God never leaves you. You
okay.
take him and he takes you. You're just always
Yeah,
in his lane. Um, so my stories, he would show up in the funnest kind of, sometimes dangerous situations, sometimes just to say, I love you. Like it depended. It ran the whole gamut, and a relationship with him. So in my stories that I write about, I like to just show really simple ways God shows up, and maybe the miraculous too, which he has and does. But I feel like the everyday person needs to just take notice. Like there's not a coincidence.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
and if you feel like, so you've been praying about something and suddenly he gives you an answer, you can tell because you've asked. You've asked him for
Right.
that.
Right.
Well, the other times he's just being himself, and you can get something, a very simple love hug, like a embrace from him in other sorts of ways. And still it's him. It's still
Right.
God paying attention to you. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think too, when you have a relationship, when you're in the word, you
Mhm.
recognize those
Yes.
times and
Yes.
you don't discount them as coincidences or,
Mm,
you recognize, oh, that's the Lord. There's no doubt.
right.
Whereas people who don't have that relationship or it's not strong yet, because we
Mhm.
all start off as babies, if you
Oh, yeah.
will,
Oh, yeah.
and we grow in our faith and
Mhm.
in our relationship. You know, I think when you start having that stronger relationship, you're more mature in your faith, you
Yes.
recognize those things because
Yes.
you know his word, you know his voice,
Yes.
you know his ways,
Yeah,
so
and
it's
you believe that he cares. There's a point where you have to actually believe he
yes,
does care for me, right? Like you said,
yes,
yes. So in
yes,
Mick's book, book 1, and in book 2 that I'm writing, the fun part for me is the 2 main characters don't notice it's him, but readers are going to. And
mhm,
so, for the most part, they're gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, they still don't see it." Well, that can be people we know. We can have
yes,
people close to us in our families or friends or coworkers, and they do the same thing. So it's realistic in that manner where it takes some time sometimes for God to reach deep into someone and to help them to see he's there. And
right, for them
I
to
like,
recognize, yes,
mhm, but
yes,
often other people will. Like,
yeah,
I'll tell a story to someone and they'll say, "Oh, that was God. God." But,
yes, I've done
you
that,
know,
yeah.
yeah, I like to
Like,
do that with my
I'll
character.
immediately say, "Praise God," and
Yeah.
sometimes people will look at me like,
And they're like,
"Okay."
"You're
I'm like,
attributing
"No, that
that
was
to him?"
awesome." Yeah,
Why would he do? No, he enjoys doing things like that. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
convinced that God enjoys it when it's like us being a parent. We enjoy when we get to give our children something and they're so excited and love it.
yeah.
It makes us feel good, you
Right.
know? So,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Well, and going back to Mick and the challenges and the struggles,
Mhm.
in our everyday lives
Yeah.
as Christians, when we go through those, we look at them differently. You know,
Yes.
what are we to learn in this instead of
Mhm.
woe is me, you know?
Yes.
Um, what are we to learn and what is God preparing us for through it, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I always find
Exactly.
that to be, a different perspective now that I'm, stronger in my faith and more mature in
Yes.
my walk, yeah,
Yes, it's so
versus,
good that we can
breaking
grow.
down. Yeah,
Yeah. I
versus,
love that we
when
don't
I
have
was
to stay in
new
that.
right, when I
Yeah.
was a new Christian, just, you know, e
Yeah.
every day throwing in the towel because I didn't realize that he's always here,
Mhm.
but
Definitely.
awesome, awesome. Alright, let's see here. Okay, how do your roles in missions, worship, and prayer teams influence the stories you tell and the characters you create?
Oh, that was a really good question when you asked me that. Um, because people haven't asked me that. They don't ask me that deeper question. So, I kind of wrote down the way that it all affected me was I partly told you because I was a newer believer and I went overseas and, God was still there. Um, but also what we talked about with growth. So every time I went on a mission trip, every time I sang on worship team, it was all about him. So I wasn't at work doing what I had to do. I wasn't home having to take care of something that was mine to take care of. Those are the times on worship team and missions, it was similar because I was putting myself in a place where I was giving back to him and I was worshiping. because both of those are worships. So it's like a, that sacrifice of worship he talks about. Well, it's when you do, how I understand it is when you worship when you don't feel like it. And you worship despite if you're angry or sad or worse, devastated about something, and you just stop and you worship. And that can be different ways, but a lot of times it's just remembering who he is, what you think he is, how you believe in him, what he's done, and you have to just go back through your history with him. And to me, worship is that a lot. It's just no matter what you think or feel, you are saying to him, you are God, I am yours, you are mine, just like the song. And it lifts your spirit. It gets yourself free from the really heavy things that the world holds for us. So I would say that made a difference. Yeah. I can think of sometimes I would never want to talk about, but to where I stopped and worshiped and I just felt release from so many of the things. It's not that it didn't happen. It doesn't erase things, but it makes you free.
Right.
Because it's what has happened is not you. It is not even God. It's things that happen here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I write that in.
That's great.
Thank you. Thank you.
I
I hope to encourage people. I'm writing these stories are pretty hard, but I'm trying to encourage people who have been in difficult things, like these two characters so far that I've written, or just have wondered, why do people struggle? Well, let's give you some insight. I'm hoping to give some insight.
Yeah.
All
right, let's talk future projects. So can you give us a sneak peek into the upcoming books in the Resilient Muldoons series? And how do you plan the continuity and development of characters and themes across that series?
So I kind of mentioned Orla, Mick's sister's book 2. I'm in the middle of writing that. I'm not even quite halfway through, but I'm working on it. In Mick's book, there's 4 siblings featured out of 8, or 5 siblings. They eventually have lesser roles, but Orla and Mick are the 2 that pretty much remain. They lived near enough each other to see each other once in America. Nobody would talk to Orla but Mick out of all the family. They kind of basically, I don't want to wreck the book, but Mick and her retained, and that is actually true. That's a true fact. Her and Mick retained their relationship, even with a little distance once they were in America. Orla is the one who demanded her own book, because when I wrote her character in book 1, 100% of the people like, oh my gosh, I want to read more about Orla. And I'm like, really? Okay. Oh boy.
Yeah, I'm going to do this one. Okay.
And I'm like, I can do an entire book, but the problem is her profession. I didn't really want to have to go into all that she did.
Right.
But as I was writing book 2, which is coming out next summer, I felt God's leading that it's turning out, and I absolutely love writing this book. It's more about female relationships than anything.
Okay.
Yeah, it gives me chills to think about it, because in her life, there had to be a lot of women. It wasn't just about men in her life. And so they actually take the back seat, and it's more about her. Yeah. So I'm having so much fun writing, and she's a real spunky kind of, she's very damaged also. She's injured herself from not liking herself. But she just persists. She's resilient again, like Mick is resilient, Orla's resilient. And it's how God just follows her around. And she has one friend who points out things, and Orla's like, no.
Like, I do remember she was definitely a strong character in the first book. Yes.
She's starting her own business. She doesn't want to be dependent on anybody. And she's fun. She's really fun. to write
Okay,
about.
so her book comes out next summer, you said.
Next July. So book Mix is this July, and then Orla's will be next July.
Next July. Oh,
And then
awesome.
after that, Mick's oldest son has his own book, and that's actually my grandfather's story. So it's the three books.
Awesome. And when will that book come out?
That'll
Also
be
next
July
year?
2026. So
Oh, okay. So you're going to
they're,
keep hitting July.
they're each a
Nice.
year. Mhm.
Okay. Oh, nice.
Thanks for asking.
Yes. Okay. How do you engage readers? And what has been the most rewarding feedback you've received to date on your books? On your writing.
Well, your review was awesome. I use it everywhere. Thank you. I would say reviews is the most rewarding, not only because Amazon helps, promote you better when you've got enough reviews, but it's the feedback. Oh my gosh. To hear how your story that you've spent in a year and a half, maybe 2, sometimes longer, it depends on the person, and you hear a reader say what they got out of it, it's just the best. It's the best part to me because it's the evidence that what you did does matter.
Okay.
And all that work you spent on it, it really resonated with someone. I mean, each review in itself is huge feedback. So that's to me the biggest reward. But as far as interacting with people, I work from home, and I also relocated across the country. So my friends are all virtual friends, kind of like you. Yeah, that's where my social interaction comes from. But I've got a private readers group that I invite people to, so they don't have to feel like everyone out there in Facebook land can read what they're saying. I've got a public author page, which is public, so people can go there and find me pretty easy. And then Instagram, and those 3 platforms, those 3 areas are where I interact the most with readers. I would say the networking is the second really great reward of doing this work, is like meeting people like you and other people that are I end up just really liking them, and they like me, and we help each other out. We help promote each other. We help do whatever we can. That's been like my second family, is the readers and other authors.
Yeah,
And
I agree with that. It's like when we're as Christian writers, we encourage each other.
yes.
And I feel like God is in the mix with that too. Like I would have never guessed I would have had you on my podcast. And then now twice. I'm so excited, having just read your book, and
exactly.
now I have a friend. I feel like you're a good friend.
Yes, exactly. I love it too when there's people that we've exchanged text, our mobile phones numbers, and we text and say, pray for me, this is happening. And so I feel like it is a community, because we can ask other authors to pray for us.
Yes, absolutely. Or when
we
you get
all
stuck,
understand.
like, I don't know how to get out of this piece I'm writing,
Yeah. Or do you think this is a good ending? Or, what should I, like, there is that happening, and it's very helpful.
Right. I'm glad you brought up the socials. I'm going to put this on the screen. I got your link tree. So your link tree will take readers to all your socials, right?
Yes. In fact, I just put my launch team application link on there too, because I'm gathering my launch team. So I remembered Linktree to put it in there with everything else.
And then I also put your Sparrow World, because that's your blog, right?
Yes. Yes.
And
I just updated that.
Awesome.
Yep.
So definitely wanted to make sure I had that on there.
Thank you.
This has been fantastic. But before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to give some closing thoughts. So what do you hope readers will remember about Mick? I know you talked about it a little bit, but is there anything else you want people to remember?
About him? I'm hoping that they will get invested with his life, regardless of what they first think about him, because God does not let go of him, and things do happen. Things do improve for him. And It's not maybe a happy ever after story, but it's still authentically good. Yeah, it ends well for him,
Good.
despite
Good.
everything.
And tell us again, where can we get it in July? Will it be
Oh,
on
okay.
Amazon, or where can we find it?
Yes, it is on Amazon under Muldoon's Misfortunes. It's up for pre-order right now. So if people want to pre-order it and get some goodies from the publisher, fill out the form. Fill out the form and put your order number in there. Comes out July 16th, and it's also on my publisher's website. And my publisher is Celebrate Lit Publishing.com. They've got it also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me. I'm going to put that on the screen so people know.
Mm-hmm.
Celebrate Lit. Give me a second. I'm a type fast. I type fast, but apparently not as fast as I would like. Let's see.
That way, if they don't want to go to Amazon, they can.
They can find you.
CelebrateLitPublishing.com.
Oh, I'm so used to the other way because
that's okay. They might be able to find it like that.
Lit. I think they can, but let's get it right. Okay, CelebrateLitPublishing.com.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make sure I spelled that right.
There you go. And they can put my name in and I'll come up, or they can put the book's name in. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Erin, thank you so much for coming on again. It's been a pleasure, as always. And I'm looking forward to getting that book. I'm going to go head over to pre-order it today.
Yay.
And, I will definitely be one of the reviewers again. So I'm excited.
Okay.
All right.
I appreciate you.
Have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you again for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.